It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, previously unseen footage from the Hull funeral parlour scandal.
There's like ends what you go pick up.
These are the moments police officers entered Robert Bush's premises for the first time, finding 35 bodies and more than 100 sets of ashes. It's now emerged that Bush, who pleaded guilty to preventing lawful burials, fraud and theft, tried to downplay his crimes under police questioning.
Well, I've been arrested off a plane by gunpoint. I've been taken, it's like I'm Che Guevara or something.
Also ahead tonight, drought declared in more than half of England. It comes amid what's expected to be confirmed as the driest month on record and could mean even tougher restrictions on water. We'll find out what it means for you. Plus, as unfair as American healthcare. That was Andy Burnham's verdict on social care today, as he vowed to be the Prime Minister who finally fixes a broken system. We'll be asking if he really can. And overcoming the obstacles, I'll speak to the UK's first deafblind doctor. Well, that's come and much more on the UK Tonight. Well, it's a case that has shocked the country, and tonight, previously unseen footage has been released from inside the Hull funeral home, where the owner failed to bury or cremate dozens of bodies and gave out the wrong ashes to grieving families. Police officers found 35 bodies and more than 100 sets of ashes when they raided Legacy Independent Funeral Directors in 2024. The owner, Robert Bush, who's being sentenced this week, apologised today to his victims. But footage of his police interviews show him downplaying his crimes and comparing his treatment to that of Che Guevara. Our North of England correspondent Katie Barnfield has our first report tonight.
I've been arrested off a plane by gunpoint. I've been taken, it's like I'm Che Guevara or something.
This is disgraced funeral director Robert Bush arguing with police as he's arrested a second time for giving families the wrong ashes and leaving bodies to decay at his funeral home. For the first time, we can show you what officers found when they went inside.
Strange, isn't it?
Throughout Legacy Funeral Directors was chaos. Bags of human ash strewn about.
There's like ends what you go pick up.
With documents and people's possessions dumped on the floor. In total, police found over 100 bags worth of ashes throughout the property. In a cold storage room, officers made their most shocking discovery. 30 decomposing bodies that Bush had lied about cremating while taking the cash for himself. In his first interviews with police, Bush accepted responsibility for what was going on inside Legacy.
The whole thing has been a crescendo of poor choices, and it's all on my shoulders. I am solely responsible for the whole event. I know that this has hurt people, and I'm so sorry for the hurt caused.
Okay.
But I never wanted this to be like this.
But after his second arrest, when the scale of his offending became clear, he denied preventing burials and answered no comment to almost every question.
Did you ever take that money for yourself?
No comment.
Did you take that money to give to somebody else?
No comment.
Bush told police he had debts of around £90,000, but his extravagant spending and transfers to his wife totalled almost £900,000. All the while he was cutting corners, keeping the money that families had paid for himself. Some were expecting a particular coffin for their loved ones. Inside the funeral home, police found a workshop where Bush was making his own out of bits of cheap wood. He'd also stolen thousands meant for charities in memory of people who'd died, spending the money on his own hobbies, storing motorbikes and classic cars inside the funeral parlour. Robert Bush is now facing jail for crimes against hundreds of victims, grieving families he exploited at their most vulnerable. Katie Barnfield, Sky News in Hull.
Katie joins us now live from Hull. And Katie, police releasing that footage from inside the funeral home this evening. Just a snapshot of what they have put out there in your report. Perhaps you can talk us through what it shows us.
Well, it just shows you, doesn't it, the kind of horror that was actually unfolding behind closed doors at Robert Bush's company, Legacy Independent Funeral Directors, and the lack of care with which he was treating the remains of people's loved ones. I mean, through all of the photos put out by police today, we could see the kind of chaos, the mess, documents dumped on the floor. He'd swept families' belongings that were meant to stay with their loved ones away and kind of discarded them almost as if they didn't matter. And we also saw in those police interviews and the police footage that was put out when he was arrested, this kind of bizarre way in which Bush seemed to change his mind. He initially seemed very remorseful and kind of seemed to understand the magnitude of what he'd done, and then almost seemed to change his mind, refusing to answer questions, arguing with the police and trying to play down what he had done. Now, very unusually, his sentence is going to last all week here at Hull Crown Court and potentially into next week now, and that's because of the amount of families that want to stand up and face him in court. It has been incredibly emotional in court so far. Many people struggling to hold back tears as they speak. We understand there are still 70 more people who want to tell their stories about how his crimes have affected them, and we'll be hearing from some more of them tomorrow.
Yeah, the rest of the week, allowing those families time to give their victim impact statements before the judge hands down his sentence. You have been in court this week, Katie. Just what has that been like? It sounds extremely difficult, having read a lot of the victim impacts that we have up on our Sky News blog.
It has been difficult to watch in some cases. I mean, some families were just struggling to speak because they were overcome with emotion. I mean, people have talked about things like having nightmares and seeing Robert Bush's face. One woman said that she struggles to leave the house now because of the trauma of what he had done and the way that he treated her loved ones. Another person said that he treated their family member like a piece of meat. The testimony has just been absolutely harrowing. But one thing that's really shone through is the way that the families have supported one another. Although they've been incredibly upset, and this must have been a horrific time for them this week, you could see in court actually how much they were supporting one another. They were offering hugs, they were offering tissues to each other and trying to provide some level of comfort through this absolutely horrific experience that they all share together.
Katie, thank you very much. Katie Barnfield there with the details of that ongoing court case in Hull. Let's bring in the local MP, Emma Hardy, the Labour MP for the area, who joins us now. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about this case this evening, a particularly disturbing one, particularly for those who live in your constituency, hundreds of families affected, and I know that you've been supporting many of them through this trial.
It's just been horrendous, and seeing that footage today just makes me even more furious that he belittled this and for so many people treated it as something that wasn't to be taken seriously. And I think it's just the inhumanity that he's done this to so many people, and the victims have been amazing, and the fact that they've been able to stand up and give their testimony just shows how incredible they are. They are so brave, and I pay full tribute to them and the police for bringing this to justice. And I just hope that the sentence reflects the severity of his crimes.
Yeah, that likely to come next week because, of course, so many families want to read out victim impact statements and the judge allowing several days for that to happen so they have the time and space to stand up in court and deliver them. But for these families, this won't be the end of this after sentencing. So many of them have turned their attentions to campaigning to make sure that this never happens to other families again. Talk turning to where is the regulation in this industry?
Absolutely, and that's what many of them have said to me, that they'll only have justice when he gets a proper sentence that he deserves, but also when they see the regulation required to prevent it happening to anyone else. And there is no regulation. I mean, this is a thing that so many people are astounded by because they say, well, surely there must be something. And it's like, no, there's nothing. There's no inspection. There's no monitoring. There's no checks on what happens when you go in that funeral home. The whole system is based on, trust and people behaving well. And the vast majority of funeral directors, of course, do. Wouldn't question that for a moment. But the fact is, there is no system in which to prevent those who don't. I mean, if you wanted to set up a coffee shop tomorrow, you'd have environmental health certificates, you'd have your premises checked, someone would come round and check it annually, you'd get your scores on the door for how well your health and hygiene is. You want to set up a funeral directors, you can just go ahead. No checks needed, no certificates needed, no inspection needed, and off you go. And if you want to do embalming, well, you don't need a qualification for that either. And I think people find it absolutely astounding that there is nothing whatsoever in this industry. And one of the things that the victims have said to me repeatedly is they want regulation, but they also really want to see inspection of funeral homes, because they believe had funeral homes been inspected, we would have seen more earlier and more quickly what he was up to.
Yeah, because that's how his crimes were uncovered. It was other people within the funeral director local community who got a look, just happened to be there helping out and had a look at what was going on behind the scenes and alerted police. I know that you've been talking to other local funeral directors because this has had a huge impact on the industry. For many funeral directors, this is a family business. They've been doing this for generations. You know, they take great pride in their work and you rely on their decency because they're dealing with people at their most vulnerable moments. They have either passed or they are grieving. What have local funeral directors said in support of this push for regulation?
Well, we got together all of the ones locally, and what we agreed through both the trade bodies, because there's two trade bodies that look after funeral homes, but of course it's voluntary, is they've inspected all of the homes in the local area as local trade bodies. And what the other funeral directors want to do is restore trust in their industry, because they are decent and they are good and they're horrified by what's happened, absolutely horrified. And they say they welcome inspection and they would welcome regulation, because the way they see it when I talk to them is they've got nothing to hide, and they say absolutely come and inspect the premises. Even some of them have said if there are families who want to come in and see what happens in the funeral home, of course when it's not being used at that time, but at other times, to come in, see what happens. They've talked about trying to sort of demystify it so everyone understands what happens when there's in a funeral home. They really want to help to rebuild that trust, because they're horrified by what he's done. So it feels like everybody's pushing in the same direction. Nobody yet has said, no, we don't want regulation.
Yeah,
but I think
and you've been campaigning for this. This isn't going to start after the end of this trial. You're already working with families to take this to Westminster. Is there political will to change this industry? Because the focus is very much on Hull, and having spoken to some of the families affected, they are worried that once Robert Bush is sentenced, attention will go elsewhere and this issue will be forgotten about.
Well, I won't let that happen. And I'm really, really pleased that just last week I heard that Andy Burnham, our new Prime Minister, is willing to meet with me to discuss what's happened at Legacy. So I'm absolutely delighted in his first week he's made that commitment to meet with me and talk to me about what's happened, because I think once people realise there's no regulation, everybody seems to agree that it needs to be there. I mean, obviously, there are questions around when and how and, to what degree, and there are details. But I think that fundamental question of do we need some regulation in an industry that is so sensitive and so important, and that, without being morbid, every one of us is going to use, most people tend to agree that we need to do something.
Yeah, it is an essential service, but as you said, such a sensitive one. Emma Hardy, local MP, Labour MP for Kingston upon Hull West and Halton Price, thank you so much for your time this evening. Thank you. That trial continues. More than half of England now officially in drought. Weeks of continuous dry weather taking its toll on water supplies. More than 20 million people are already under hosepipe bans, and much of the country is now experiencing the fourth heat wave of the summer. It comes as today marks the 7th day of 2026, where somewhere in the UK recorded a temperature of 35 degrees or higher. Sky Science and Technology editor Tom Clark has this report.
England's fields are parched, some even scorched by wildfires. Rivers and reservoirs are running low and the heat waves continue. All the ingredients for drought. And now it's official. The Environment Agency has declared half of England is in drought, with 7 regions across central, eastern and southern England affected. Almost a third of the country, including Yorkshire, parts of the southeast and northwest, is now in prolonged dry weather status, putting increasing pressure on farmers and water resources. Meanwhile, only the northeast is seeing normal conditions for this time of year. Why? Well, England's only had 7% of its average July rainfall. The south of England, just 1%. On top of that, there's the severe heat. 12 consecutive days, 30 degrees or above, driving off what little moisture there is in the soil. Drought criteria informed by river gauges, rainfall data and monitoring sites like this one, part of a UK-wide network measuring soil moisture based, get this, on how it scatters cosmic rays from space.
The cosmic ray neutron sensor provides a field scale measure of soil moisture. So we're counting neutrons over an area probably about 200 metres radially from this point. So if we're looking around us now, that's covering this field and a few of the adjacent fields as well.
What are we looking at here?
What we're seeing here are probably very similar values in terms of the soil moisture for the site, but we're seeing it reach those values very quickly and probably a bit earlier on in the season than we did previously.
So what does a declaration of drought actually mean? Well, for most of us, not very much. 7 out of the 9 big water companies in England have already imposed hosepipe bans on us. But if you're a farmer, it spells disaster.
At the minute, everything is being challenged, and so that is a direct result on our cash flow, you know, and farmers won't have the cash to reinvest in their enterprises at all. The whole aspect of the industry is depressed, is the easiest way of saying it, and it is right the way across the board, in the drought areas in particular.
The declaration signals to farmers, water companies and industry to prepare for lean times, possibly for a long time. Rain forecast next week will be insufficient to reverse the drought. The long-range outlook is for high pressure and drier than average weather. An end to this drought may not come till autumn. Tom Clark, Sky News in Hungerford, Berkshire.
Now let's speak now to climate scientist and Professor of Hydrology at the University of Birmingham, David Hanna. Good evening to you, David. Thank you so much for coming onto the programme to talk about this drought in the UK. The big question is, could we have avoided this? Could we have been better prepared?
So the current drought that we're experiencing is the result of what's called a combination of a flash drought. We have a combination of high air temperatures and low rainfall. As your report said, we've had sort of a dramatic shift in our weather, in that we had an exceptionally wet winter where reservoirs and groundwater reservoirs were filled. But since then, we've had a very dry spring, and into July, we had incredibly dry conditions with 7% of the expected rainfall nationally, 1% in the southeast. And at the same time, we had 3 heat waves, so increasing evaporation and also increasing demand. So this combination of low rainfall and high temperatures has resulted in drought conditions. These types of events we might well expect, in that this is the second consecutive summer we've had these types of conditions, and the third time in 5 years we had a drought like this back in 2022. So it's really putting pressure on water resources, but is the type of more extreme climate that we might expect under climate change.
Yeah, just listening to our science correspondent there in his report, he was saying that, you know, these drought conditions are likely to last until autumn. What are the effects that will leave us with? What are the long-lasting effects of what's happening right now?
You know, the drought has significant impacts, both economically, socioeconomically, and on human health and ecosystems. So in terms of the economic impacts, we can expect there to be reduced agricultural production, as your piece showed, also reduced yields, and there'll be real costs for farmers as a result of that. We've also seen the possibility of more field fires, so we can have wildfires and fires occurring in agricultural landscapes, and impacts on not just arable farming, but on livestock and on the supply chains. The impacts also affect river levels as well as soil moisture, so we have issues around navigation and recreation for people and industry. And there's particular concerns across Europe at the moment, which is experiencing similar very warm conditions around power production, the ability to take on cooling water and to discharge heated effluent. There's also impacts upon people in terms of health, in terms of dehydration, heat stress, etc., particularly for the young and the old. But the real and longer term impacts, I think, are on the ecosystems themselves in terms of impacts on biodiversity, potential on fisheries. So we don't need to think about water quantity, but also water quality and water temperature that can impact upon fisheries, and impacts more broadly on the environment and the green spaces we use and the habitats that provide communities amenity and also for well-being. So some quite significant impacts.
And the current drought now means that there have been 3 droughts in the past 5 years, and we keep hearing that these long, dry, hot spells are going to continue. How can we future-proof? What needs to be done?
Yeah, I think they're becoming more frequent, as you say, and they can have serious impacts, as I've noted. I mean, the water companies and the regulators are working on this, so thinking about ways in which we can use water resource planning. We had a very significant drought, a landmark drought back in 1976, but we haven't built any reservoirs since. There's now plans for 8 or 9 new reservoirs. But we need to also think not just about the ways in which we supply water, but how water is used. We need to think about regulation around abstraction, about how we might release water strategically from reservoirs for ecological and societal benefit. And we also have a part to play as consumers, thinking about the ways in which we use water so it can be provided in a fair and sustainable manner.
David Hanna, really good to talk to you this evening. Thank you so much. Professor of Hydrology there at the University of Birmingham. His comments on the current drought in the UK, 7 areas in the UK currently under drought conditions. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, police say that they will review the deaths of 4 people who shared a homeless shelter with convicted serial killer James Desborough. The 40-year-old has been given a whole life order for the murders of 2 men he lived with in a hostel in Cornwall, as well as his prison cellmate. Amelia Harper has been following the story and joins us in the studio now. Amelia, a rare whole life term for a man who may have had even more victims.
2, SJ. He's been given 2 whole life terms for the 2 victims. He murdered 2 men. He dismembered their bodies before burying them in a wood. And a whole life order, 1, but we've obviously got 2, is quite a rare sentence, but it means that he will fundamentally never be released from prison. He will die in prison. And there are a few steps to this story, so I think let's start with what we found out today. So he has had those 2 whole life orders. It came after the guilty conviction yesterday, and these were of men that he murdered while after he had lived with them at a homeless shelter in Cornwall in 2025. Those 2 victims were 57-year-old Claudio Aquilino and 43-year-old Daniel Coleman. And he had lived at a place with them in Newquay called Sandy Lodge Hotel. And police had said that through the trial, he had befriended them initially before subjecting them to extreme violence. They also said that he had used their bank cards to make it look like they were still alive before they then found burned bone remains in woodland near to a cabin where he had lived. And we can now have a look at the moment that he was arrested for those 2 murders.
Right, if you just come in a minute, mate. Yeah, all right. James, the time is 21:35, all right? At this moment in time, I'm arresting on suspicion of murder. Right. OK, if you do not have to say anything... 1 second.
Yeah, mate,
we'll sort... Yeah. Do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence. Do not mention my questions. Some of you later on. Anything you do say may be given evidence, all right? Necessity for your arrest for a prompt and threatened investigation, all right? And for protect a vulnerable person.
All right, can you put...
Well, Jane, one sec. Let me just sort the cuffs, and then we will sort everything slow time, mate.
Woke up.
All right, yeah, no worries.
We might not have been able to see the footage, but just to have described that was the moment that police came to arrest him. He had been living in a cabin in Woodland in Cornwall. Importantly, SJ, earlier this year in March, he was sentenced already to life with a minimum term of 19 years for murdering his cellmate while he was on remand awaiting trial in relation to the murders of those 2 men because he found his snoring irritating. Now, today, police have said that they are looking at unexplained deaths in relation to 4 other individuals who had lived with him at the time that he was in this homeless shelter. Now, police have stressed that at this point he is not a suspect and they don't believe there is a link at this time, but they are open to their inquiries at the moment, SJ.
Thank you, Amelia Harper there with the update. To another story now, the Metropolitan Police say no further action will be taken against Green Party leader Zach Polansky. This was after he shared an image on social media of a man wearing a T-shirt with a guillotine on it and the words, "We're only making plans for Nigel." Our chief political correspondent John Craig joins me now from Westminster. The Nigel with that T-shirt referring to, of course, Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK. What's the latest on this story, John? It's been rumbling on all week.
Well, the latest is that Mr Farage has suffered a double rebuff because two police forces have said they're not going to investigate. Now, earlier today, late this afternoon, Mr Farage gave an interview in which he demanded action against Mr Polansky. He had forwarded a post on social media showing a photograph of a man at a rally in Bristol wearing that T-shirt. This was Mr Farage speaking late this afternoon, demanding action against the leader of the Green Party.
We all get things wrong in life. We all make mistakes in life. And what we do afterwards is we apologise. Given that he refuses to apologise, I expect the Metropolitan Police to act.
Well, not long after that, the Metropolitan Police responded by saying, no, we are not going to act on this. They said that it's unlikely the sharing of the image online would constitute a criminal offence. Steps were taken to remove the post when the issue was raised. And they went on to say this. While there will be people who will argue that those who shared the image in this Instagram post should be subject to criminal action, our view has concluded that on this occasion, the threshold is not met. We've spoken with those impacted to explain that decision-making and to provide reassurance around our ongoing commitment to their security and the additional support available. Now, the Met also said in their statement that the event where the picture was taken, it took place in Bristol. As a result, they said they've transferred the crime report to Avon and Somerset Police. They will consider what further action will be taken. Well, it didn't take Avon and Somerset Police long to follow the Met's lead and say they'd considered the evidence and that no complaints were received from people at the event. No evidence the wearer of the T-shirt intended to threaten anyone or encourage anyone. As a result, Avon and Somerset said a senior detective has determined the threshold for a criminal offence has not been met. No further action. Well, there has been, as you can imagine, an angry response from Reform UK. They have said, following the both statements, once again, we see that we are living in two-tier Britain. Zach Polansky is allowed to get away with inciting murder while ordinary people up and down the country get a knock at the door, making a joke online. Well, just to paraphrase very briefly, the Green Party said that it was obvious from the start that Reform were always using this as a political football for their own cynical purposes to distract from questions about their own dodgy donations.
John, thank you. John Craig with the latest there from Westminster. Still to come on the UK tonight. The new Prime Minister promises to overhaul the social care system. We'll take a look at his plans. Plus, I'll speak to the UK's first deafblind doctor. as unfair as healthcare in America and a major dereliction of public duty. That's how Andy Burnham described social care in this country today and successive governments' failure to tackle the crisis. The Prime Minister has promised to overhaul the system, saying he wants reform to happen with urgency. He held cross-party talks on the crisis today, but failed to rule out tax rises to help pay for his plans. Our People and Politics correspondent Nick Martin has this report.
Absolutely brilliant man. Just watching him month by month slip away. It's crucifying, you know, and it's just so unexpected at that age.
Richard Freed was diagnosed with dementia at just 55. He died in February. His wife Mary says his care home costs were £8,000 a month and wiped out their life savings.
We have been through the whole system and I have fought tirelessly to get the best for him. And it has been a fight on every level. It's been extraordinary, you know, being given money on the one hand and having taken away on the other. Being given wrong information, being given no information, people just putting their hands up saying, don't know, sorry, off you go. It seriously needs fixing.
No, I'm now the Prime Minister.
You what?
He's the Prime Minister.
Well, a new one.
Another one.
But I keep changing it before.
I know.
Andy Burnham is attempting to do what none of his predecessors have managed, to sort out Britain's broken care system.
You've probably got a feeling of déjà vu, don't you? This time we're going to do it, right?
An ageing population, rising demand, skint councils. This is not a new story.
I don't want them brought up in a country where the only way pensioners can get long-term care is by selling their home.
And security in old age.
We're determined to do the right thing by these people.
Older people will not have to worry.
We will fix the crisis in social care.
You should know we're taking urgent action, providing new funding to discharge people into social care.
I thought about my sister, a care worker. It's amazing work.
Around 420,000 people live in care homes across the UK. Those in the sector say reform is urgently needed.
30 years I've been working in this industry. 30 years we've been saying the same thing.
Nicola Richards owns 2 care homes in Sheffield.
Firstly, I welcome his comments. We've heard it for years, and we have. We have heard, you know, social care reform for years, and actually there's been no changes. In fact, it's got worse.
I suppose the big unpopular question is who pays and how much.
The money's got to come from somewhere. I think the important thing is wherever we get the money from, it's got to reach the services that need it.
The estimated cost of social care reform ranges from £5 to £10 billion.
Governments have come and gone, reviews have been commissioned and shelved, promises have been made and then broken. And yet families are still left to navigate a system that is often expensive, fragmented and under huge pressure. Andy Burnham says this time will be different.
I can't be left alone. I can't stand up. You know, I can't walk.
Laura is 95 years old. Because she has assets of over £24,000, she has to pay for her own care until that money runs out. Her family say the system is unfair and needs to change.
It's the old chestnut, isn't it? You know, she'd worked all her life, and because she's got a little bit more money than the standard of 24 or something, then she has to pay for her own care until it goes down to a minimum. So I find that wrong.
For 4 decades, governments have agreed the system is broken. What they've never agreed is who should pay for it. Nick Martin, Sky News, Sheffield.
Well, this will all sound very familiar to my next guest, Andrew Dilnott, the author of a 2011 government review of social care. His proposals published 15 years ago. This time we are going to do it, says Andy Burnham. What's different this time, do you think?
Well, we've got a Prime Minister who is absolutely committed to it. Now, funnily enough, Boris Johnson was very committed to this as well. He left office probably 2 months sooner. If he'd stayed on for another 2 months, we'd have had a reform. I think having a Prime Minister so committed, and I think Mr Burnham's given this even greater prominence than Boris Johnson did, that's one thing that's different. We have to do this. We are, as the Prime Minister said, we're letting ourselves down. We're creating misery where there shouldn't be some. It's time to get on and take some action.
Yeah, You'll have listened to Nick Martin's report there, those contributing to it who work in social care, who are receiving social care, say, look, you know, we've been hearing this is an urgent issue for 30 years. In that 30 years, how much worse has the system got?
It's got much worse, mainly because of something that we should be just over the moon about, which is that people are living longer. And as I get older, I'm very glad people are living longer. There are massively more older people still alive into their old age, needing care. Through that time, funding has not kept up at all. So even the only means-tested system that we've got is delivering care to fewer people, older people now than it was 15, 20 years ago, despite the fact that the numbers have gone up such a lot. So the pressures on the people needing care have grown. The pressures on the people delivering the care have grown as well. We've got 1.5 million people working in paid employment in social care, nearly as many as in the NHS, and the pressure they're under is close to intolerable. So it has got worse. There's definitely a crisis. There was a crisis 15 years ago. It's worse now. We're all letting one another down. We should get on and face up to it.
Yeah, the time for talking is done. It's now time for action. As I said, your recommendations published 15 years ago. I'm sure many of them still hold and have greater urgency today. Did you recognise much of what Andy Burnham had to say? Was he aligned with you in terms of what you think will help and what needs to be done urgently?
I think so. I mean, the Prime Minister, I think very sensibly, didn't set out a detailed plan. He's been Prime Minister for 8 days. We saw what happened in 2017 when Theresa May and her team invented a new social care policy in a matter of days. It fell apart because although in some ways these are straightforward things, the system itself is complicated. Taking some time is right. I think what we need to be absolutely frank about is what the costs are likely to be. I think that Mr. Burnham would like something that I'd like. I'd like it to be free for everybody, but I'm not sure that's politically or economically, particularly politically realistic. The cost of that will probably be more than £20 billion a year. So I think the real work starts now, and that's working out how the government can take steps towards what would be the Prime Minister's long-term goal of it being free for everybody in the most cost-efficient way and the way that helps the people who need it most. And of course, I would say this, wouldn't I? But I think the answer to that is the reforms we set out in 2011 that were legislated for and then reneged on by the 2015 Conservative government, legislated for by Boris Johnson and then pulled away from in 2023 by Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak's government, and then promised by Wes Streeting when he was the Shadow Secretary of State for Health in the last election campaign, and then reneged on by the Treasury 6 weeks after the election. That is, we should cap people's liability so that everybody knows that the worst financial case would be paying, say, the first £80,000 of their costs, and after that, they would be looked after. And that would help so much people like the gentleman who you had on earlier on, or rather you had his wife on because he's now sadly died. Yeah. Those critical, extreme cases are the people who face the worst fear and get the worst deal at the moment.
I mean, as a nation, we don't like talking about death. We don't like talking about old age and making plans for that. But what we really don't like talking about is money. And that's where all of these recommendations and plans fall down. Do we just need to be realistic? This is going to cost. I know the Prime Minister has said, look, I'm going to look at existing budgets if we can make the money work better. The money it would save the NHS to fix social care, you know, the money could be moved from there. But essentially, there is going to have to be some kind of tax or levy. Is that what you found in order to fund this properly?
Yes, I mean, so the amounts of money are not large compared to the overall government budget. The overall government budget is now much more than £1,000 billion a year. I think we could make a really big improvement in all of this with an increase in spending of £10 billion a year. But that's enough that we need to recognise there is a cost. We wouldn't dream of thinking that our house insurance or our car insurance should be free. We don't think that the NHS has no cost. We spend nearly £250 billion a year on the NHS. Social care will never cost anything like that much to do it properly, but it does have a cost. If we want to have something that is better, we have to recognise that we all have to make a contribution to that. And I think that will be a critical part of the work that Baroness Casey, who's running another review, will be doing over the next year, which will be trying to get people to face up to the reality of this and realise that if they want something better, which on the whole they do, there does have to be a cost.
Yeah, paying now because it's going to cost a lot more in the future if this isn't fixed. Andrew Dilnut, Chair of the Commission on Funding of Care and Support back in 2011. And thank you so much for coming on this evening. Now, to become a medic, it takes years and years of study and training. And my next guest tonight has gone through all of that while having to overcome some significant hurdles along the way. Alexandra Adams has just become the UK's first ever deaf-blind doctor after graduating earlier this month. Dr. Adams has just under 5% central vision in her left eye and severe and profound hearing loss. Her journey to becoming a medic was anything but easy, battling discrimination and illness to get to where she is today. Well, I sat down with Alexandra and I started by asking her when she decided to pursue a career in medicine.
I was actually sort of gearing towards the 2012 Paralympics as a swimmer, and I ended up having a surgery which went very wrong. So it was meant to be a simple overnight stay in the hospital. Ended up in being in the hospital for just over a year, having to have multiple surgeries. And, you know, what else can you do as a bedbound 16-year-old? You know, I began to do a lot of observing, you know, observing what made a good doctor, what made a bad doctor or not so good doctor. And I will never forget that there was this one doctor who came up to me and she asked me a really simple question, and she just said, "Are you okay?" Which is really surprising because not many people ask you that question. Yeah. And of course I told this doctor that I was really frightened and uncertain for my future, and she got up and she drew the curtains around the bed, and then she lifted up her top to show me a big scar across her abdomen, and she just said, "I know how you feel." And it was in that moment that she had taught me that, yes, I was going through this awful ordeal, but I was developing empathy, and empathy was something that I could use in the future to help other people. So, yes, I don't have as much eyesight as most people, but I have more insight, and I think that is just as important when you are treating patients.
It must have been very daunting, though, to go into the medical profession because you are a trailblazer. You are the UK's first deaf-blind doctor. So when you're looking around for a role model or somebody like you, there wasn't one. So it must be very daunting to be the first and to go into a degree which, let's face it, like most setups, most organisations, most education systems are geared towards able-bodied people. Absolutely. What was that like?
So I don't actually recall it ever occurring to me that I was the first deafblind to be doctor, especially at the beginning. I think obviously as I sort of began to share my journey along the way, people were like, "Oh, you must be the first." But I think at the beginning it was just a case of just trying to fit in. But obviously I knew that this was going to be different. It was going to be difficult. And at the very beginning I had to make sure that it was not only realistic but also safe, because that is the utmost priority. You know, are you safe enough to be a doctor?
And you were probably dealing with institutions that were asking that very same question at the same time.
Absolutely, yeah. And unfortunately, that comes with tick boxes. And as a disabled person, you are never going to fit that perfect tick box of, you know, you're just not, you know, there's no, but actually there is no perfect image of being a doctor. So I did go through these sort of occupational health assessments, et cetera. But what was really, excuse the pun, eye-opening for me was a trip to the US, quite spur of the moment actually. I think it was my second year of medical school, where I went in search of blind and deaf doctors because I needed to know whether, you know, what I was doing, is this doable?
Whether it would result in a job and a career.
Yeah, and
at the end of your studies and hard work.
Exactly. What are they doing differently to ensure that they can hold down this job? And I met 5 completely blind doctors and 1 completely deaf doctor, and actually the biggest thing that they taught me wasn't that they had necessarily better equipment or more money to help them do the job. It came down to the fact that they had colleagues who were more willing to sit down and say, "Okay, so I can see you've got this impairment, I can see that you're struggling with this, but what can we do differently to help you feel and do your job, you know, the same way as everybody else and to fit in?" So, you know, inclusion, open-mindedness, innovation, they were all things that made a huge difference.
Yeah, let's be clear, there are no shortcuts to becoming a doctor. You go through the same education, the same training, the same testing, the same evaluation as any able-bodied student.
Yeah.
But you know that there are those attitudes out there, even though you've proven people wrong. Yeah. You have qualified as a doctor, you are now a resident doctor. But you have taken to social media to dispel those myths, and you have, you know, a couple of 100,000 followers across different platforms to talk about how it works. Because when you say to somebody, I'm a deaf-blind doctor, the first question will be, how on earth does that work? Yeah. And you quite simply show them how.
Yeah. Yeah. And I welcome those questions because, like I said, I fully anticipate that that is going to be the first question. I mean, when I started, I didn't, like you said, I didn't have that role model. There were no other deaf-blind doctors out there, so I didn't know if it was doable. But I have found along the way that there are two different types of people. There are, you know, it comes down to sort of innocent ignorance, so people that don't understand, but they are open to learning and can change their mind and their perceptions of things. And then there's people that are ignorant, and no matter how much you try and educate them, they just don't know, because they don't want to know, because they have this set prejudice of what it means to be disabled, and they just don't want to accept that. But I'm so grateful that my misconception videos have reached many people, because I just hope that by being positive and advocating for better, it does teach people as to what you can do and what is possible, because you never know, there might be future generations of people, disability or not, that want to pursue something like medicine but don't know if they can. And so saying, oh, well, this is how I use a stethoscope as a deaf person, this is how I take blood as a blind person, hopefully it gives them a little bit of hope and direction.
Using a stethoscope as a deaf person is actually, thanks to the advances in technology and AI, which is coming into the NHS so much more, which, will help you along the way as much as you want it to and as much as it can. Can you just explain the stethoscope to us? Because again, that's one of your most popular videos.
It is.
Because that is the standard bit of doctor kit, right?
Yeah. I mean, actually, come to think of it, it's probably one of the only pieces of equipment that I use that's specialist. When it comes to the visual stuff, I don't really require other sort of additional things. But this stethoscope is like any other stethoscope, but it's just got a Bluetooth function to it, and my hearing aids are Bluetooth. So you just switch it on, flick on the hearing aids, and you place just this onto the patient's chest, and you can hear the heart and lung sounds without actually having to put anything in your ears, which is great for, and I always say, the little patients, the younger patients think, whoa, you've got super hearing, But it's great, because there have been a few instances where I have, thanks to having technology in my hands, I have picked up on heart murmurs better than my colleagues who have full hearing. So we cannot dismiss, the beauty and the possibilities with technology, and it just means that people like myself with disabilities, it just kind of helps to level things up and just helps us be able to do stuff.
Still to come here on the UK Tonight. We'll have the latest on the row over FIFA's plan to sell off stakes in the World Cup.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand,
Wow.
here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Tell us who you're looking for.
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it. From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shots rang out. People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country, it's ours.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power. No freedom! Sky News, the full story first.
There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition.
This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado. What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters? The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. Free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in. Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous. We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
With a slow reveal, James Green is here with the sport. FIFA continuing to make the headlines. It was a sort of suspenseful pull out there
it's
to
my
reveal
contract.
you were here.
I need the drama, you see, just like Gianni.
Yeah, exactly. There is a lot of drama going on because Gianni Infantino and his plans for the World Cup, essentially selling off stakes. He's doubling down today, isn't he, despite a wave of criticism from all corners, it seems.
Yeah, big backlash yesterday. So today he's doubled down on his plans. Let's go back to yesterday, when he announced the launch of FIFA Forward Enterprise, so it's basically selling off a portion of FIFA, which will include their commercial rights. So you're talking about broadcasting, sponsorship, ticketing, licensing, even the operational element of running their tournaments, so the World Cup and the Club World Cup too.
The plan is to make people a lot of money.
To venture capitalists,
yeah.
Absolutely. The interesting part of that is that throughout the whole build-up to the World Cup, when there was a scandal around the amount of price that fans had to pay for tickets, Gianni Infantino, that man right there, came out in the press, reiterated constantly, we are a non-profit organisation. What we make at a World Cup has to supplement us around the world and grow football around the world. That was his words. But they're not going to be a non-profit organisation if this deal is allowed to go through. And if it does go through, like you said, rightly so, there are going to be some nations who surely are going to look at this and go, hold on a minute, so I'm going to make quadruple the amount I would normally make.
Yeah.
That sounds very good if you think about a nation like Cape Verde, who benefited from an expanded World Cup, which was brilliant, by the way, and they had a great journey, great experience, quadruple their money.
Yeah, that's
think
a
of
lot.
what that could do for them. Curacao, you know, there's so many examples, these smaller nations, smaller islands that you can imagine will actually look at this blanket way and go, hold on a minute, I'm getting more money. FIFA's argument is, well, the money goes into football. Football will make and have more money. Well, actually, technically, yes, that's correct. But you're selling the soul of the game. And it's now not going to be a non-profit organisation, as I mentioned. And now how much say is there in terms of ticket prices, etc.?
Yeah, because that's what's it going to cost the fans? It's not going to bring ticket prices down, is it?
That's the big concern, I think. I think a lot of fans will kind of sit back and watch and see what happens, see the reaction from UEFA, who vehemently oppose this. They've got an emergency meeting tomorrow with their member nations. But fans, it's a tricky one. We don't know because the information isn't really there at the moment. And the fact that FIFA have rushed this through without consulting their nations the federations is really concerning, I think. No consultation whatsoever. They've just done that. So
we'll watch this one with a great degree of interest,
watch
James.
this space. Also to watch this space, the transfer window. It's hotting up and a couple of surprises on their way to Chelsea. More next.
Right, here we are. First day back, I suppose. It kind of feels like, doesn't it? How is the feeling? Because everything feels quite new around here.
Now, of course, first day of pre-season with the full squad outside on the pitch today. And the first team meeting talking about our season ambition and who we want to be. It's been a great day, and of course I'm very excited, yeah.
How does it feel? It feels odd coming here. I haven't been shouted at by Katie McCabe or given a big hug by Beth Mead. There is a different feeling here today.
Yeah, you'll get them at some point, just not around Arsenal. Yeah, of course, they are legends of the club on what they've done for Arsenal, and for me it was a pleasure working with them as well. In both of them there's so much football intelligence, and learned from them, and I think Katie, with her leadership, her vocality on the pitch, same with Beth, very energetic, vocal on the pitch. Of course, we'll miss that. But yeah, it's a new season, and we have a lot of great players coming in, and there will be new dynamics, and we have a lot of leadership in the squad as it stands, and then it's always interesting in the group dynamics. How are these different roles going to be filled with the squad that we have right now? But it looks really, really good.
The decision to sort of transform the squad, to move on from certain players, to kind of maybe get a bit younger, was taken some months ago. Was there any kind of...
Thanks very much, James. We're going to take a quick look at the weather now.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, after a fourth heat wave for parts of the south, cooler and fresher conditions will take over to end this week. Most places looking warm and fine this evening, but there will be a few showers for the northwest. More general rain will affect some central parts of Britain. That rain will tend to fade as it moves south overnight, while showers take over more of the north and the west. It's going to be warm and muggy for southern Britain, cooler elsewhere. Tomorrow morning will bring sunny spells.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
That's all from the UK Tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Up next, it's The World with Barbara.